Hi, I'm Barb.
Hi, I'm Pat.
Pat and I have a lot of interesting conversations.
Yes, and we thought you might like to listen in to our podcast that we've called Coffee House Inspirations.
We hope you will enjoy our topics.
Good morning, Barb.
Good morning, Pat.
How are you? Smoky.
Oh my.
I'm just being dramatic. It's pretty smoky.
Is that because of the smoke? Yeah. I'm better today than I was yesterday. The smoke was really, I didn't realize that it was the smoke until about halfway during the day. And then that's when I shut my windows.
I always put it into perspective for myself this way. We're slightly inconvenienced, and the people in the midst of this are really suffering.
I know. I was thinking about that yesterday because I thought if my throat and chest hurt this bad from this distance, how must it feel for the people that are right in it? I know I thought about that yesterday. It's really,
so it's a bit of perspective. Anyway, so here we are. We're back at Gary Zukav's book, The Universal Human, because we're having a total immersion here. And you and I have been talking about this back and forth all week because this has had and is having quite an impact on us, wouldn't you say?
Yes, and I'm also wondering how many of our listeners or anybody that's listening have actually got the book now and have read it or parts of it and stuff, and will be able to relate to or sympathize with us.
Feel sorry for how neurotic we are. I would hope so too, because it seems to be a little bit of a book for our times. And I was reading something that he was talking about all of the the things within the environment that are going on right now, and how really important it is that we're dealing with our own issues so that we can be more clearer as we go further in this, in this time of a lot of things going on.
Yeah, and I think he kind of describes that as the crumbling of the institutions, right?
Yes. Well, and he also talks about all the things that are going on in the climate, and all the things that are going on in politics, and the things that are going on in in finance, and sort of I'll just run through a few things so that we can end. We'll start on a little darker note and we'll end on a little happier note.
Okay.
The world teaches us about ourselves each time we see connections between it and choices that we have made. For example, we see hurricanes more violent, droughts are drier, fire seasons are longer, and fires are more uncontrollable. We see Arctic ice disappearing, glaciers melting, islands sinking into the sea, and coastal cities beginning to flood. We see fracking poisoning aquifers. That's just the looser stone below the earth that what the fracking sort of contaminates.
Yeah.
Pesticides, fungicides make us ill. We see microplastics in the ocean, crops shrivel, hunger spread, fellow students of the earth school starve and die. And we realize that we have created all of this. None of it could have happened without choices that we made. And this is the collective learning, rather than saying, well, I didn't do that. So the two chapters that we're going to look at today are called As Within, So Without, and As Below, So Above. So he starts out with these chapters and saying, as without, so within appears to be the natural order of the world for 5 sensory humans. So in other words, whatever's happening on the outside is the reason we're feeling whatever on the inside.
Right.
They experience the world as primary and consciousness as secondary. So first physical, then. That is, they believe that the world determines their consciousness. Therefore, they strive to change the world in order to change their consciousness. They pursue external power. The opposite of this is, as within, so without, is the natural order of the world for multisensory humans. They experience consciousness as primary and the world as secondary. That is, they believe that consciousness determines the world. Therefore, they change their consciousness in order to change the world. They create authentic power.
Right, right. That's actually a good explanation there.
And so this is what we're going to be. Yeah, so we're going to be kind of looking at this a little deeper, because, you know, we also have to understand, how does this apply to us individually? Because if this collective movement from experiencing the world as we see it, and from within as it is so without, then we really are called to look at what is going on inside of us that is possibly contributing to this mess.
Yes, and there lies the work, and the, like, trying to understand it is right there.
Yeah, it's right in front of us. We can't not
Right
see
there.
it. We can't not see it when yes, there's so many things that are knocking on our door right now. One of them was the pandemic, the climate issues that are getting closer to home every year. And, you know, there's this entire kind of issue of racism and how we created that, and what is our part in this, and our part of being the solution. And so we've got a lot to look at.
Yeah, and that's what we're trying to understand, isn't it? We're trying to understand. It's not that we don't agree with that, with what he's saying. It's now we have to try to understand how we have created this, and what is our part, and how, and what can we do now?
Yes,
about
because
it.
you know, he says 5th century humans think changing themselves and changing the world are entirely different. Multisensory humans see that they are the same. Changing your consciousness does not change the earth. The earth is a living entity that exists with or without us. Yet when we are not aware of the relationship that we have with the world, we cannot learn about ourselves from the world. When we become aware of this relationship, the world shows us parts of our personality that we have not seen. Until we become aware of those parts of ourselves, we see them in others. This is called projection.
Right. And don't you have a definition of projection?
Yes, thank you for reminding me. So I was doing a little bit of research on projection, because I think I understand it. I think I understand that when we disown some part of ourselves, we throw it onto somebody else and then criticize them.
Right.
And, well, that's not me. So I went and did a little research on this, and I found an article. It's called "It's Not Me, It's You." Projection explained in
I like that.
terms. So she's using the definition from a psychologist by the name of Karen Koenig. Projection refers to unconsciously taking unwanted emotions or traits you don't like about yourself and attributing them to someone else.
That sounds right.
And then she says, why do we do it? A lot of aspects of human behavior, projection comes down to self-defense. Koenig notes that projecting something you don't like about yourself onto someone else protects you from having to acknowledge parts of yourself that you don't like. Projection does what all defense mechanisms are meant to do: keep discomfort about ourselves at bay and outside our awareness. So,
right.
Yeah. So then when he says that until we become aware of those parts in ourselves, we see them in others. This is called projection.
Right. And in that next paragraph there towards the bottom, he says, if you're not aware of these frightened parts in yourself, or you have not challenged them, or you feel that you can't challenge them adequately or at all, then you will attempt to challenge them outside of yourself in the individual that displays the same frightened parts. So basically that's what she has just said. If you can't acknowledge them within yourself or challenge them, or you don't want to see them, or you're in denial, whatever, then you're going to project them onto somebody else, and you're going to see them in them. And it's them that are that are at fault, I guess, is what you could say.
Yes, and then we get to say, well, that's not me.
That's right. That's not me. That's them. It's not me. It's you.
Aren't they bad? So I was thinking, you know, when we were talking about this, I was thinking about the whole kind of issue of, you know, climate change and environment changing and this sort of thing, and how many people are so angry about the denial of it. And that made me wonder something too, because, you know, a lot of that, like if you have somebody that's prepared to stand up and go and be seen and to lead a movement or whatever, like, you know, Greta Thunberg from
Right.
Sweden, and how much of that rage is put on her.
Yeah.
You know, that who does she think she is, and she's being manipulated and she's getting all this information somewhere else. And it made me think that somewhere in that rage is that fear that people have about maybe not being able to see the disaster of something, or not wanting to believe that we made a mess of things, or whatever it might be. But if you you know, put that rage on somebody else and then call them, because she gets called all sorts of names, and she gets, you know, it's not only her gender, but her age and her ethnicity and this and that and the other thing. And people attack her personally without providing anything useful about why they don't agree with her.
Yeah, because I think they're upset that they're being called out. Like we're all being called out by her. She's doing a really good job,
Yes.
actually.
And so, yeah, go ahead.
And so you have to take a look. You have to take a look at what she's saying.
Yes.
And take a look at yourself and how you are contributing.
Yes.
And you might not want to see that.
No, I think that's really hard for us to see, because we thought for up until now that the earth was our playground to do whatever we pleased.
A resource.
Yeah. And that it would never be too much, that we could never take too much.
Yeah.
And there's something in us that had that belief that that was possible. And now we're reacting to this limitation, or this call for action, call for change. And it's dividing people tremendously.
Mm-hmm.
And
well, I wouldn't you think then that a lot of people are still in that old mindset, then the five sensory, where it's always going to be here, it's always going to be enough. Because when we grew up, I never ever thought that there would ever be lack of resources on the planet. And now that there is, and now that it's in danger, you either have to see it and accept it and challenge those parts and those fears in yourself, or not. And those are the ones that are challenging Greta.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Because he explains it. He says, 5 sensory experiences of the world teach 5 sensory humans about the world. For example, mountains are high, rain is wet, the speed of light in a vacuum is 299 kilometers per second. Multisensory experience of the world teaches multisensory humans about themselves. And herein lies the relationship between our awareness and the world. So it's not just, Mount this, or it's not just this river, or it's not just, this fact about science. It's who are we in this world as active contributors.
Right. And so I'm just going to read another paragraph that I've got highlighted here. And so they're talking about it starts off, I maybe should read a little bit before that, but I'll just start here where I've got it highlighted. It says, instead, they can look within themselves at what they disdain, reject, and find disgusting, and challenge experiences of disdain, disgust, and rejection within themselves. So basically, he's asking us to challenge what we're seeing in others, to challenge that in ourselves. As they move beyond the control of the parts of their personalities that are activated by what they see in the world, they're able to set their intentions to change the world, not in order to feel better themselves and not to make others villains, but to contribute to the world with an empowered heart without attachment to the outcome. So,
Yeah, so that's a quite a call for us to come to understand the parts of ourselves that is fearful, because I really agree with his premise that he says that whenever we find ourselves in in fear, and I always go back to the lists, that of how he
right.
delineated between fear and love, and whenever you find yourself in an experience of jealousy or anger or resentment or feeling superior or feeling inferior, or you trying to please to get something, feeling entitled about things, every compulsion or obsession that you have, addictions and more, whenever you're in any of those feelings, it's not to, poo all over yourself. It's to understand that you now have something that emerged or that came up that is expressing a fearful part of yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And if you can go there gently and compassionately to understand what that might be, and that you can come to terms with it and clear it, then imagine how that impacts the world around you.
Yeah, how it expresses itself out there.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, that you stop fighting over something, or you stop trying to get something that you think was, yours and you didn't get it, or
Yeah.
trying to control somebody because you're afraid of them leaving you, in this kind of whole area around jealousy or envy even.
Mm-hmm.
And imagine how peaceful you would feel if you could clear those things and then just react to something as it is, instead
Yes.
of bringing all that fear with you and going into that grand old fight that you have about things, or blaming other people, or wanting to feel somehow that you can change the external world enough so that you can control this from happening again, and you can't.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That's
Yeah.
the so within, so without part
Yeah,
of it.
well, I love this. I love this paragraph, and I think we'll all be able to relate to this one here. That he says, learning through projection and reaction also occurs in large collectives, such as national and international collectives. For example, when individuals see a lack of integrity or awareness in a president or a prime minister of an externally powerful nation acting in ways that could create far-reaching harm, such as accelerating climate change or igniting a nuclear war, they strive to prevent those actions in the world without realizing what they represent: frightened parts of their own personalities that are out of integrity and at war continually, or threatening destruction continually. So he's asking us to see what we see in another, or even collectively in another country, even, or the leader of another country. What is that person showing us that we are projecting from ourselves?
Yes. Yeah, I agree. So I think that's why this feels like such a big project.
Oh my God, that was almost hard to say.
Well, I know we were texting one day and you said, I don't know if I can even do this. This is overwhelming.
It is. It's pretty.
But here's the upside of that.
Okay, let's hear the upside.
At least the way I see it is that each time we challenge ourselves in something like that something comes up and we're just like mad, that old saying, I'm mad as hell and I'm not going to take it anymore, that kind of thing. And you use this process to say, where is there fear expressing in me right now? What could I possibly be afraid of? And to really do, like we talked about last time, an honest inventory of what is that, so that we can hopefully clear that over time. And nothing is going to happen in a day, and nothing much will happen in a week, but over time, we become more at peace with ourselves. And guess what? we become a little bit more peaceful with the world around us.
Yeah.
And that's an energy of the multisensory personality or multisensory human
Hmm.
that creates peace around. Because remember, what Gandhi said, he said, you have to become what you want to see in the world.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that has to be a genuine sort of movement.
Yeah. Well, yeah, because Gary Zukav says that we've got 1 foot in the old consciousness and 1 foot in the new. And he says it's not that the old 5 sensory consciousness was bad. It's just that it's not working anymore, and we can see evidence of it all around us.
Yeah.
And so it says that we're kind of straddling it, kind of like straddling the fence.
Yeah.
And we're just evolving into a more multisensory consciousness, because we really have no choice. It's happening. If we look out into the world,
yeah,
it's happening, and so we have to go with it and work with it.
Well, and also to keep it real, in the sense that is that if you're moving from that 5 sensory to multisensory, your transition is to really stop looking at the world as our problem, but as co-creators of the problem.
Yes.
That we are required to take that responsibility, to take a deep look at ourselves and understand that the fears that we reflect out will always create a kind of chaos or a kind of conflict, because we're working to not resolve something, so we're pushing against, and that's always
so the world's a great reflection of our evolution.
Yes. Well, and I mean, that's a really good point, because we are still in an evolutionary process.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes you might not recognize that, because it looks, sometimes you look at things and you think, geez, are we devolving? Are we going backwards here? But we're not. We're evolving, and like he says, the world is full of thousands upon thousands of multi-sensory individuals who are seeing things in a different way.
Mm-hmm.
That's the boat I think we want to be on.
That is the boat that we want to be on.
Well, at least I do. I would not want to be on the Titanic. So this is an interesting thing that I've been reading a couple of times over, because he says the ability to distinguish between love and fear in yourself, to challenge fear by choosing to act from a loving part of your personality instead of react from a frightened part of your personality, and to cultivate love when you recognize it by realizing that it comes from a loving part of your personality, is real. Fear is not real.
Can you read that again?
He says the ability to distinguish between love and fear in yourself, to challenge fear by choosing to act from a loving part of your personality. And he's saying you have that loving part of your personality to choose from.
Oh, right.
Instead of react from a frightened part of your personality, to cultivate love when you recognize it by realizing that it comes from a loving part of your personality, and that's real. Is that when you're cultivating that part, and you had said that last week, that it's not like we have to wait till all the fear is gone, that we can do some kind of overriding, because love is a powerful force. We can do some overriding into a more loving place, even though we still are feeling somewhat fearful.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And to cultivate the love and choose from that place instead of a place of fear. So it's really a process, and it's really work, isn't it? Like, you have to really be kind of aware.
Well, there's that
emotional awareness. That's what he calls it, emotional awareness.
And then he says to change yourself is not a trivial matter. That's why we're so anxious. It's more than significant. It is the transformation that you were born to accomplish, to experience, and to utilize, not from the perception of a personality, but from the expanded perception of love.
Yeah, because he does say that I mean, incarnated into the earth school as a soul into the physical to partake
Yeah.
in all of this, to grow in consciousness and to develop these loving attributes.
Yeah.
Did that
That's
make sense?
That's absolutely right, because this multisensory experience is to understand that, to understand that we are having a human experience, but we're basically spirit.
Yeah.
And that we always have said, well, we're humans, but we have a spirit.
That's the other way around.
As a secondary sort of thing, as instead of saying we're here to have this human experience as souls to grow.
And it takes a lot of courage as a soul, or I've read and been told that it takes a lot of courage to come down to earth and experience the physical world and all of its teachings that they has in store for us. It takes a lot of courage.
I agree with you. I think that's a good thing to remember too, that we didn't come here to fight and be small and to be unhappy. We came here to grow and to express joy and to embrace this place that we've chosen, this earth school, in a loving way.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe in that. I think that's possible. I think that it begins with us.
Yeah. Are we going to go on to the next one then, Pat?
Well, I think we're just about out of time.
Are we done?
Yeah, I think we're done and done here. It's not to say that we can't visit this again at some point, but I think it would be nice if we could get some feedback from people, if they're listening or if they're done with this or if they're interested in it. And we'll carry on anyway, because we're just having fun, right?
Yeah. Hey, by the way, did you ever get in touch with Gary Zukav?
No, I haven't yet, because we just talked about it last night. I'm afraid to say this out loud.
Well, no, why don't you? I think it's possible.
Well, we had this, we were texting for a little bit yesterday on a couple of these things, and I said, I think we should invite him onto our podcast.
Mm-hmm.
And then we kind of started laughing about it. And then I thought, well, what the heck? Why don't we ask him?
Yeah. I mean, we both watched an interview that he did through Banyan Books in Vancouver. They have a podcast, and he was one of their guests. And so we watched that, and he seems really keen on helping people and supporting people.
Yeah.
So he said that.
Yeah.
So, and I'm sure he gets lots of requests, but it wouldn't hurt, right?
Well, he might even be interested in, I'm just having a little dream here. He might be interested in talking to a couple of mature ladies from
exactly.
and see if he can't influence our sphere a little bit, because we have a few people that listen, and it might be a kind of fun thing to do. So stay tuned. We'll see how it goes.
We'll keep our fingers crossed.
Anyway, so have you been listening to anything or watching anything lately?
You know who I've been re-listening to a lot lately is Eckhart Tolle. He's got a podcast called
okay.
That's the name of his podcast, Eckhart Tolle Essential Teachings. And it's recent. So he does it, I believe he does a new one every Wednesday. So there's a new one up right now that I haven't listened to, and it's called The United States of Awareness. That's the title. So I've been listening to him again with his old stuff and his recent stuff. And he's just a wonder to listen to. Like, I just love listening to him.
Yes, I agree. And I think it fits very well with what, Gary Zukav says.
Yeah.
And so can I quickly read something that I found so fun this morning? It's from Pam Grout's book, The Course in Miracles Experience. And she's talking about Cory Booker. for the guy who was actually running for president,
Right.
or for nomination rather, and then he's now in the Senate, I believe, or I think he's a senator.
I think so.
And so when he was running, people said, you better go and talk to Mama. And he didn't know who Mama was, but they said that she wielded a lot of political pull. So being a sharp guy, a Rhodes Scholar and a Yale lawyer, he of course chose to pay due diligence. He knocked on Mama's door, sat down for a chat, and soon enough let her take his hand and tour him around the projects. Young man, she said, tell me what you see here. Not sure exactly how to answer, he began a list. Well, there's a lot of trash. There's broken down cars, kids with no direction. And she says, young man, stop right there. As long as that's all you can see, that's all you will ever see. He got it. He realized that it's our vision, our ability to imagine a better future that brings a better future about. The world outside is a reflection of what you have inside. Booker says now, if all you see are problems, that's all there will ever be.
Oh, that's so good. So who's Mama?
It was just that he was campaigning around the projects, and they said, well, you better go see Mama, because
so she's the resident kind of guru.
Kind of the resident, yeah.
Oh, that's so good.
Yeah. Anyway, Barbara, we have to end this here.
Okay.
And that was fun.
Yeah. And confusing.
But it's a journey, right? It's just a journey.
Yeah.
And be easy on yourself, and everybody's on it, and we're just doing our best.
Well, we got some interest in last week's podcast. We got some feedback that people enjoyed it. So I hope they enjoy this one.
I do too.
Yeah. Okay.
We'll see you next time.
All right. Goodbye, Pat.
Bye, Barb.